Well, it's that time of evening now for some conversation with our man. I can't say Malcolm in the middle here, but the gentleman who knows how to find young persons making significant strides and marks on society. We now welcome Mr. Miguel Melbourne. Good evening, Miguel.
Good evening, good evening. I must say the location looks great. Next time just let me know, even if you just need some security or something, Erwin. Make sure I'm on that flight.
It can be arranged, There are several flights a day. Our Minister of Tourism made sure that there's enough airlift to Jamaica. So we're not short and just let's book your ticket, man. Right?
Absolutely. Erwin, good evening to you and good evening to our distinguished listeners wherever in the world you're tuning in from. We thank you. My name is Miguel Anthony Melbourne. This week on Melbourne Motivation, my guest is a young woman who's an absolute powerhouse. Let me tell you more. Alexandria Miller is a Jamaican-American writer, historian, and Ph.D. student at Brown University. She earned a bachelor's degree with distinction in African and African-American studies in history from Duke University in 2017. Alexandria is passionate about education equity and Caribbean women's history. She was selected as one of the 30 under 30 by the Caribbean American Emerging Leaders Institute of Caribbean Studies in 2018. She's also an image maker and member of the Beautiful Projects Beautiful Community, a North Carolina-based nonprofit through which her photography was showcased in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And in 2021, Alexandria founded Strictly Facts, a guide to Caribbean history and culture. It's a bi-weekly podcast and digital platform that aims to educate and celebrate Caribbean history by connecting history, politics, and activism to our rich contemporary music and popular culture. And so with that, I say, Alexandra, welcome to Melbourne Motivation. Welcome to what I like to call the Irie Bridge. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling so grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Miguel.
Absolutely. Alexandra, where I wanted to start, you're a researcher and a historian. So I figured I would do a little research myself. And what I found is that you have a deep love for reggae music. And so let's start here. First, tell us where in Jamaica your roots spring from. And second, no pressure here, but I do want to challenge this reggae love you have. Give us your top 5 reggae artists of all time.
All right. Well, I have to shout out Senti and Clarendon up there in the building, Prospect, Black River Hailings, everybody listening. My love for reggae stems very far from childhood. It's probably some of my earliest memories. I feel like there are, those powerhouses who everybody will name. And I don't want anybody cuss me off for my list or anything. It's just my most plays. I definitely have to say Aberis Hammond is one. Garnet Silk. I don't even know if I can do 5. That was a very, very hard ask. But definitely Barris, Garnet Silk, Marcia Griffiths, Phyllis Dillon, even. Okay, that's 4. Let's see.
One more.
Dennis Brown, I will say, definitely rounds out like a top 5 major powerhouses for me. But then you played Chronix earlier. That's one of my favorites. So I don't know if I can fully even do 5, but I'll stop there unless you want some more.
You know what? I thought that was going to be a very pressurized question. Our elders are listening, and the elders think that us young folks don't know the good foundation music. So I hope they're surprised and pleased with that list. I love that list. Barris is my guy. That was a tough ask. Thank you for playing along. Alexandra, you're currently pursuing your PhD, which is the highest degree and pinnacle of the academic experience. And, listeners, when you hear institutions like Duke and Brown University, do want you to know that these are 2 of the best schools the United States has to offer. But Alexandra, quickly, if you can take us back a little bit, when or how did it click for you that your education is something you can actively use to design your future? When was that for you?
Well, I mean, I started off I always loved to read. And I always loved history, which made me somewhat of an anomaly in my classes. I feel like everybody's on the STEM train nowadays, but I always loved history. Didn't think I was going to get a PhD and become a historian, but I think it really shifted for me when I went to undergrad, and just the mass of, I think, wealth of research and knowledge that's out there, that's one, not readily accessible, to everyone, I think is important. As I said, as you mentioned in my bio, Miguel, education equity is really important to me. And so I think that was one thing definitely that started me thinking of how I can really meld my interest and my passion for history and education into really being representative of all people, especially Black people. It's important for us to know our history. It's important for our stories to be told, especially from our own perspectives. And that's just, one way that I've really seen how I can bridge some of these interests and to really make them my own and make a career out of it.
That's interesting. You love history from the time you're young. You love reading, and you've carried that into your future. And where I want to go next. In 2021, you started the Strictly Facts podcast. Can you just tell our listeners why you decided to create it, and what are some of the topics they can expect when they tune in?
Definitely. I mean, if anybody, when we think about the diversity that is the Caribbean region, right, there are so many islands, so many nations to learn from. And the fact that, your family may come from one island, that sort of pigeonholes us from knowing the histories, the connections even between other islands in the region, for instance. And so I really always have these sort of one-off conversations with my friends. I have people from my Trinidadian friends, my Guyanese friends, etc. And then we somehow stumble upon these conversations, or we're like, oh, that happened, that happened over there as well, right? And so I think one thing that really stuck to me was these are conversations that definitely need to be had. And again, to my point on representation and accessibility, they're conversations that, everybody should have access to, especially. And so I started Strictly Facts as sort of just a fun project. It almost became, it started off even as a pandemic project even, but it really was to sort of ground these histories, these stories, these discussions in ways that are really important for all of us to really be having with one another. And again, easily accessible, easily understood for all people. And then Strictly Facts, as you mentioned, it's biweekly. It features all Caribbean descended historians, scholars, etc. And there's, an additional reading list. So if you want to learn more, you definitely can. But I've had anything from, discussions on the history of Papiamento in the Dutch Caribbean to conversations of the various migrations to the Panama Canal from other, Caribbean islands and what happened as a result of these sort of migrations. What else? Talking about the legacies of the Maroons in the Caribbean, and even the Garifuna. It's really a wide base, and I'm really ensuring that we're having these interregional and as well as diasporic connections and conversations.
Alexandra, if I can just tell you how much I absolutely loved once I went to the website and saw some of the topics you were covering. Just personally, one of the things I love about Melbourne Motivation is I do get to speak to young folks from all across the Caribbean. That forces me to do a little bit of research, and I get excited every time I learn something new. And certainly one of the tough things, for folks who are Caribbean, that is in the United States, it is connecting back to the history, and particularly hearing the history from folks who are passionate about it and actually know it. So I just wanted to reiterate how amazing I think the work you're doing is. What I do want to ask next, Alexandria, it's evident, why you're listed among the 30 under 30 Caribbean American emerging leaders. You found causes you're passionate about in education equity and Caribbean women's history. And at the same time, you're pursuing your highest education, you're not compromising the love for your culture, right? And so from that perspective, what is one piece of advice you'd like to leave with the youths listening as a key to unlocking their full potential?
That is a very, multifaceted question, right? I think number one, as you sort of said, be authentic. So I'll give two very quickly. Be authentic to who you are, right? There's always things that still need to be done. And, even thinking back to the sort of African Dinkra symbol, the Sankofa, it's always important to look back as you're moving forward, right? And so be authentic with who you are. The people who are close to you, I think, would be one piece of advice, but also to be a little colloquial, like shoot your shot, right? I think a lot of the things that I've done in life, it's just because I decided to take a risk, right? To try it. And, you only fail when you don't try, or, somebody could tell you no, but there's always another way, there's always another avenue. And so really take that pressure off yourself of, worrying about failing, and just try it and see what happens. And I might be really lucky, but I dunked a lot of my shots. So I think that we all should really just take the pressure off of failing and just try anything.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Whether it's Jamaica, whether it's every country in the Caribbean, we do have this authentic sense about us. Ladies and gentlemen, youths listening, do not give that up. And as you mentioned, just give it a try. We're in this vibe right now. We're celebrating all our young athletes. Erwin knows me. I represent all of them. I think you all are amazing. And continue to just give it a try, and incredible things may just show up in your future, as Alexandra is mentioning. So I love that advice. Alexandra, as we wrap up, absolutely, you're a change maker. Thank you for sharing this meaningful conversation with us on Melbourne Motivation. Please tell our listening audience where they can learn more. How can they follow? How can they connect with your movement?
Definitely. Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Alexandria_RM, but also be sure definitely to check out Strictly Facts. We have new episodes every Wednesday, or every other Wednesday rather. We're at Strictly Facts Pod on Facebook and Instagram, and at Strictly Facts PD on Twitter.
Fantastic. Appreciate you greatly. Erwin.
What can I say? Every week you seem to top it. And this young lady from Clarendon, right, making waves all over the world, just as I say, make your glad bag bust. And I just want to say that, well, how pleased we are of her. Demonstrating that the future is in good hands, and we wish you all the best in your endeavors, and Godspeed. Before you go, Melbourne, before you give us our closing comments. So what school were you carrying yesterday, sir? What two schools? One has to be male and one has to be female. But no, Alexandra, what schools? Yesterday was high school championship. So she going to stay out of it. She never won name. Next time she ask her 10. But anyway, what schools you were carrying yesterday, sir?
Now, well, Erwin, I'll tell you what I was impressed by. The ladies from Edwin Allen, and of course Kingston College. But you know my stance. I'm in America, but my heart is Jamaican. So every single athlete that showed up, I'm extremely impressed by, Erwin. And you know what I was thinking today, Erwin? How Jamaica just have a pot of gold in every industry. It doesn't matter what we do. If it's entertainment, if it's food, if it's track and field. And you know what? As I was watching everything, a part of my wish was that the rest of the world could just turn on their TV and watch it just the same. Watch it just the same. They see it at the Olympics, but what a story for them to see it even earlier. I think it's the greatest show on earth. But that's really what I was thinking, Erwin.
Yeah, and that's cool, and that's exactly it. Our young people leading the charge and setting the example, because as I said in an earlier segment today, it wasn't just about them winning or losing. It's their deportment, how they carry themselves, how they approach their craft, and these are young people. And as Ricardo Chambers I was speaking with indicated that we have to discuss it another time. We're talking about 5 days. We're talking about not your regular 8-hour shift, 10 hours, young people. And that is something we're going to have to even look at, that we really need to make it a little easier on them as far as that is concerned. However, they did not fail, and we're talking about world lead times. We're talking about world high school records, So it's not your pian thing, And the other thing we have to give credit to is that the administrators, those who manage it. And we must also note here that all the persons working are volunteers.
Wow.
No, volunteers. You're talking from Tuesday through Saturday. So yes, it is one of the greatest show on earth, and we just wish at some point the world could turn on and take a cue and take a time out from the challenges that faces us. Before we go, share the folks how we can remain in contact with you, sir.
Absolutely. Certainly, as I close, I must wish my uncle Nathan Headlam, Uncle Basil, happy birthday. But ladies and gentlemen, my personal and professional goals are to help the youth be best prepared for college, career, and beyond so that we can have more Alexandrias out there. Visit pathwaytopurposenyc.com. Use the code IRIE, IRIE for a discount when purchasing our college study flashcards. Follow Melbourne Motivation on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. As I always say, until next time, please be safe and live with big energy. Erwin, next week.
Thank you very much, Miguel. All the best to you. There you have it. Melbourne's Mr. Melbourne's, I like to say.